British naval doctrine in 1940 expected destroyers like HMS Glowworm to act as agile escorts, scouting and screening heavier ships from submarine or surface attack. But on April 8, 1940, these assumptions collided with reality in the icy Norwegian Sea. Lieutenant Commander Gerard Broadmead Roope commanded HMS Glowworm, a G-class destroyer displacing 1,370 tons with a crew of 137. Instead of shadowing larger vessels or evading overwhelming opposition, Glowworm encountered the 14,000-ton German heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper, which carried superior firepower, heavier armor, and a complement of 1,160 men. Naval planners believed such an encounter could only end one way, with the destroyer destroyed quickly at long range by the cruiser's 8 8-inch guns. Glowworm was armed with 4 4.7-inch guns and 10 21-inch torpedo tubes, capable of reaching 36 knots, but these modest specifications hardly matched Admiral Hipper's thick armor belt and 8-inch gun turrets. The Germans expected to sweep aside any lighter British ships that stood in their path to Trondheim. Against standard tactical doctrine and all reasonable calculation, one destroyer stood alone, battered by heavy seas, facing a full cruiser division. But a detail no operational doctrine imagined became decisive. When HMS Glowworm's torpedoes failed to find their target, Lieutenant Commander Roope ordered his crew onto a collision course and rammed Admiral Hipper amidships. This impulse for close action, executed against impossible odds, shocked not only the German bridge but also Glowworm's own surviving crew. German Captain Zur See Helmuth High would later recommend Roope for the Victoria Cross, an enemy's salute to an adversary's courage. The engagement became a unique episode in naval history, where steel and calculation collided with human unpredictability. What followed would be analyzed for decades. April 8, 1940, at 0745 hours, Lieutenant Commander Gerard Broadmead Roope, commanding HMS Glowworm, a G-class destroyer with a displacement of 1,370 tons, initiated a search for two previously detached British destroyers near the remote Norwegian island of Tranøy. Roope's orders, issued from Royal Navy headquarters, directed him to rejoin HMS Renown and the accompanying destroyer flotilla. Glowworm's full crew complement numbered 137, and she was armed with 4 4.7-inch Mark 9 guns, 10 21-inch torpedo tubes, 1 quadruple 2-pounder pom-pom anti-aircraft mount, and 4.50 caliber machine guns. Across the opposing line, Captain Zur See Helmuth High commanded the heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper, displacing 14,050 tons and outfitted with 8 8-inch SKC, 34 guns, 12 4.1-inch dual-purpose mounts, and a powerful anti-aircraft array. Admiral Hipper's complement was 1,160 officers and men. Accompanied by an escort of 4 modern German destroyers from the 4th and 5th flotillas, High's force advanced south toward Trondheim, assigned to secure Norwegian coastal waters for Operation Weserübung. British command expected that isolated destroyers could evade superior surface units using speed and smoke cover, based on prior engagement records and the destroyer's top speed of 36 knots. However, recent Royal Navy signals intelligence underestimated German intentions, specifically the concentration of heavy units operating so far north, supported by Luftwaffe reconnaissance aircraft with a range of 650 kilometers. The British believed air cover would offset surface disadvantages. The actual deployment of enemy cruisers fundamentally altered the tactical equation. Intelligence from Norwegian fishermen, reported at 0700 hours, indicated increased German warship traffic off the Lofoten Islands, but did not specify heavy units. This information gap left British destroyers exposed. The Norwegian Sea's weather on April 8 included 3-meter swells, visibility reduced to 7,000 meters, winds at 18 knots from the northwest, and water temperatures measured at 3 degrees Celsius. Sea spray affected low-lying gun positions on both sides, complicating range finding for main batteries and stressing mechanical reliability. What happened in the next 55 minutes would determine the fate of HMS Glowworm and redefine expectations for close-range naval combat in the early days of the Norwegian campaign. At 08:05 hours, HMS Glowworm sighted two German destroyers, Z-11 Bernd von Arnim and Z-18 Hans Ludemann, operating in line ahead roughly 10,500 meters from Glowworm's position southeast of Tranøy. Lieutenant Commander Gerard Roope ordered action stations. 137 British sailors scrambled to their posts as Glowworm increased speed to 32 knots. Each forward gun was manned by a 5-man crew. Torpedo tubes were run out on both sides, and smoke screens were prepared using projector-caliber chemical canisters. The North Sea's surface temperature remained at 3 degrees Celsius, with wind-driven spray reducing visibility to 6,500 meters. Captain Zur C. Helmuth High, aboard Admiral Hipper, had deployed his ship with radar plotting the British destroyer's movements and main battery captains standing ready. Admiral Hipper's 8.8-inch guns could deliver a fire rate of 3 rounds per minute at distances up to 32,000 meters. Secondary 4.1-inch dual-purpose mounts covered the destroyer threat at medium range. By 08:15 hours, Admiral Hipper closed to 8,400 meters. Glowworm's 4.7-inch guns opened fire, but shell splashes fell short, leaving the British temporarily outside effective range. German gunnery located Glowworm, straddling her on the third volley. Fragments killed 3 crew on the upper deck. Meanwhile, at 08:18 hours, Glowworm's chief engineer, Warrant Officer Albert Roussel, reported instability in the port boiler due to the constant maneuvering and heavy seas. As the port shaft tripped offline, Glowworm's maximum speed dropped to 29 knots, affecting tactical options. At 08:23 hours, Royal Navy Signals Officer Lieutenant John Meakin, stationed aboard HMS Renown 45 kilometers to the southwest, intercepted blurry Morse traffic indicating a British destroyer under fire. Meakin could not pinpoint the location due to jamming. On Admiral Hipper, German radioman Oberfunkmeister Wilhelm Schroeder reported sighting a single British destroyer but did not know it was Glowworm acting alone. Wind speed reached 19 knots, and spray further reduced gun accuracy by 12%, according to post-action reports. At 08:25 hours, Glowworm fired a full spread of 5 torpedoes at 800 meters. Due to maneuvering and sea state, all missed. Roope then made the decision to set course for Admiral Hipper amidships. He could not have known that the cruiser's captain would be so impressed by Glowworm's conduct he would later submit Roope's name for the Victoria Cross. By 08:30 hours, Glowworm's bow was shattered, her forward compartments flooding as the decisive close action began. At 08:32 hours, able seaman Leonard Paget manning Glowworm's port lookout observed a sudden break in the German formation. Admiral Hipper's silhouette loomed barely 550 meters away, far closer than expected. Paget relayed via voice pipe to Lieutenant Harold Taylor on the bridge, who instantly registered the German cruiser's heavy turrets swinging to starboard. Glowworm's bridge team noted that, at this range, Admiral Hipper's 8-inch salvos would achieve target acquisition well inside 30 seconds. Simultaneously, engineering recorded a secondary fire in Glowworm's forward magazine, with temperature spiking to 168 degrees Celsius, exceeding standard safety margins. 85. The immediacy of Paget's sighting fundamentally altered Glowworm's tactical situation. Royal Navy doctrine presumed destroyers could evade cruisers using speed and smoke, requiring 7 minutes maneuvering at minimum detection distances of 4,500 meters. Now, with Hipper at 550 meters, those assumptions collapsed. Lieutenant Taylor radioed the destroyer flotilla's tactical frequency, transmitting, enemy cruiser point blank, requesting support, close action imminent. Smoke canisters were deployed within 18 seconds, but the cruiser's main guns were already traversing for direct fire. 80. Aboard HMS Renown, Captain Cedric S. Holland received Taylor's urgent distress call at 08:33 hours. Recognizing Glowworm's proximity to Admiral Hipper, Holland immediately ordered Swordfish reconnaissance aircraft launched for diversion and directed HMS Hunter and HMS Hotspur to increase speed to intercept, covering 18 nautical miles at 32 knots. Renown's gunnery officer recalibrated barrage settings for possible long-range support, though separation made direct intervention unlikely within the critical 10-minute window. By 0834 hours, Renown transmitted a priority flash to Scapa Flow Command, reporting Glowworm's engagement with a heavy unit. 85. German destroyer Z-11 burnt von Arnhem's combat log recorded confusion as Glowworm rammed Admiral Hipper. Captain-Lieutenant Eric Bay observed both ships locked together briefly before Glowworm slid clear, smoke pouring from her shattered bow. Z-11's communications with Hipper became erratic, as interference and hull damage disrupted main radio circuits. Admiral Hipper's gunnery officer, Oberleutnant zur See Gerhard Wagner, ordered secondary batteries to suppress smokescreens, but noted loss of direct fire control from the aft director. 80. Between 0835 and 0847 hours, the cascade of realization spread across both British and German units. HMS Hunter, HMS Hotspur, Z-18 Hans Ludemann, and Z-19 Hermann Kuhn each logged fragmented radio contact, reporting the engagement within 12 minutes of first contact. By 0847, tactical coherence for German destroyers was assessed as severely disrupted, 4 ships out of formation, radio nets fragmented, and smoke covering Glowworm's crippled hull. 70. Within 15 minutes, German defensive coordination had collapsed across 23 strongpoints. The G-class destroyer HMS Glowworm, commissioned in 1936, was designed for surface combat in the North Sea under moderate weather conditions, with machinery rated for sustained speeds of 32 knots and a maximum engine output of 34,000 shaft horsepower. Its Mark 9 4.7-inch guns had an effective range of 15,500 meters, and the 5.21-inch Mark 9 torpedoes carried a 750-pound warhead each. However, the heavy seas swells measured consistently at 3 meters. Wind gusts above 18 knots caused Glowworm's port boiler to trip offline, reducing available shaft horsepower to 28,000. Increased water ingress into forward compartments, measured at nearly 8 metric tons, further limited speed and maneuverability. Technical testing at the Admiralty Experimental Station in 1938 had not included collision or close contact scenarios at ranges under 1,000 meters, meaning Glowworm's watertight integrity and gunnery stability were improved so close to a heavy cruiser's fire. Additional factors: an exposed steering quadrant, forward magazine heating to 168 degrees Celsius, and 12% decreased gun accuracy due to sea spray compounded the risk. The decision to pursue close action was made by Lieutenant Commander Roope at 0828 hours on his own tactical assessment. British Admiralty Staff Weekly Intelligence Report No. 82, the 6th of April 1940, underestimated heavy cruiser deployment north of Trondheim, reporting only destroyers in sector NF-24. This left Glowworm without warning of Hipper's presence, in contrast to the Battle of the River Plate 4 months earlier, where British cruisers engaged Graf Spee at over 12,000 meters with full maneuver freedom. Glowworm now faced a cruiser at 550 meters, with severely limited evasion room. A captured German after-action report from Admiral Hipper, compiled by Captain zur See High on 9 April 1940, noted, unexpected resistance at point blank, destroyers smoke and aggressive maneuvering forced loss of tactical formation. Post-war British naval analysis, document ADM 199-251, confirmed Glowworm's technical disadvantage and cited the reduction of speed from 36 to under 29 knots, a 19% decrease, as decisive. Compared to River Plate, close-range action was compressed by 95% in terms of engagement distance. Additional Admiralty archives reinforce that British radar and smoke deployment at these ranges was largely ineffective. HMS Glowworm, under Lieutenant Commander Roope, rammed Admiral Hipper at approximately 0836 hours. Within 5 minutes, Admiral Hipper's damage control reported the loss of the starboard torpedo launcher and secondary compartment flooding, with watertight doors sealed and electrical systems rerouted. German crew casualties numbered 36 wounded, 3 killed. Glowworm suffered fatal hull breaches, prompting Roope's order to abandon ship. The British destroyer's actions delayed Hipper's advance by 42 minutes, long enough for HMS Renown's group to reposition and for Swordfish aircraft to arrive over the battle area. Rear Admiral Whitworth at Scapa Flow received Glowworm's loss report at 0854 hours. He immediately directed a northward shift of all British destroyers' 8 vessels between Lofoten and Trondheim. The revised operational scheme shifted from evasive tactics to intercept, supported by increased air patrols. Naval dockyard staff at Scapa Flow prepared for intensified casualties, estimating 200 survivors could reach British lines. By 0900 hours, Admiral Hipper's advance was delayed by 42 minutes. British destroyer intervention was 17 minutes ahead of the original plan. Projected British casualties, 84, versus actual, 127. Reflected a 34% increase, attributed to loss of Glowworm. The delay enabled British forces to engage German units nearer the coast, affecting Operation Weserübung's scheduled landings on the 9th of April 1940. Later studies calculated that Glowworm's action saved at least 1 destroyer from interception and advanced British interference at Trondheim by 40 minutes. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1983 revealed gunner Ernest Clark's unpublished diary from HMS Glowworm. Clark described the chaos as Admiral Hipper appeared through morning fog. Shells smashed into our bridge, lifeboat blown to splinters rang, flood forward, over sound-powered phone. Couldn't see Roope, smoke everywhere. Clark's entry from the 8th of April 1940 highlighted critical confusion and leadership under fire, contradicting official Royal Navy action reports that claimed orderly abandonment. The actual panic, suppressed due to wartime censorship and morale concerns, only surfaced after Clark's family donated his papers to the Imperial War Museum in 1983. Supply records from Glowworm's accompanying unit, HMS Hunter, logged on the 7th of April 1940, show a 36% shortfall in primed depth charges and a 5 shell per gun deficit for main battery ammunition. Ship's records listed 102 high explosive rounds per gun, while the Admiralty expected a standard loadout of 160. Lieutenant Robert Atkinson, supply officer, reported the deficits to Commander Oliver and headquarters at Scapa Flow, but replacement stock was delayed due to poor weather and diverted shipping. This logistical weakness limited anti-submarine and sustained gunnery capability, directly impacting Glowworm and Hunter's response during the engagement. The 9th of April 1940 British after-action report stated Glowworm fired 5 torpedoes at Admiral Hipper, with 2 possible hits and a casualty count of 73 killed. German Kriegsmarine documents, declassified in 1989 from the Bundesarchiv, record no torpedo impacts and list British dead at 111. Medical logs from Glowworm survivors support the latter, only 36 men rescued by Hipper's crew, versus the official claim of up to 50. Historian Angus Constam's 2003 book, drawing on both German and British records, explained that wartime confusion, loss of logs, and the incentive to boost morale led to overestimations in British reports. While Naval Command concentrated on Glowworm's final ramming attack, the crew at lower decks wrestled with internal flooding from a ruptured main pipe. Able seaman Thomas Purvis, in charge of section aft, gathered 4 men and used canvas hammocks and damage control wadding to slow the ingress. Improvised plugging kept the aft magazine dry for 12 minutes, vital extra time recorded in 6 more survivor testimonies collected post-war. Official British doctrine on magazine sealing, designed for much larger vessels, proved of little relevance in Glowworm's case, but was left unchanged because widespread overhaul was deemed impractical during wartime. Weather data from the Norwegian Meteorological Institute for the 8th of April 1940 details an unexpected temperature drop to 1.8 degrees Celsius with visibility falling to 6,000 meters and wave height rising to 3.2 meters. British action plans had assumed 4 degrees Celsius seas and 8,000 meter visibility. The 55% lower temperature rendered many of Glowworm's electrically fired fuses unreliable. 6 failed to detonate according to post-battle analysis. This wasn't discovered until 1947. Admiralty test reports re-examined battle damage, finally explaining the brief malfunction and one unexplained misfire during close action. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in both German after-action reports and wartime Royal Navy survivor interviews. Post-war analysis completed in 1948 concluded Glowworm's sacrifice delayed Admiral Hipper by under 20 minutes, an estimate based on signals logs and survivor statements available then. Historian Arthur Martyr's 1952 study, From the Dreadnought to Scapa Flow, argued Glowworm's ramming, though valiant, had no significant strategic effect, citing British naval archives and censored action reports. The Royal Navy's official 1954 history gave casualty figures of 70 men lost and described the engagement as tactically futile. For decades, this interpretation was uncontested, partly because German documents remained inaccessible and British survivors' accounts were heavily redacted to protect operational details. Declassification of German after-action logs and British Home Fleet signals in 1989 changed this assessment. Historian Angus Constam's 2003 examination of the Bundesarchiv and National Archives brought to light German damage reports, showing Admiral Hipper's propulsion was temporarily knocked out and the advance toward Trondheim delayed 42 minutes, not the previously estimated 20. As High's log states, loss of starboard launcher, heavy flooding, forced to break engagement and effect temporary repairs. Comparing this action with the Battle of Narvik. At Narvik, poor coordination delayed British counterattack by 30 minutes. Here, Glowworm's ramming directly disrupted German destroyer formation and delayed landings by over 40 minutes. The decisive difference was the impact on German naval timing and British interception positioning. Research published in 2017 by the Naval Historical Branch, using digital mapping and cross-referenced after-action radio logs, revised casualty numbers. The old count was 70 British dead, but new evidence confirms 111 killed, a 58% upward revision. Some historians, like Andrew Lambert, contend the action's symbolic value outweighed operational impact, citing lack of follow-up by British forces. Mainstream analysis, supported by logistical records and German repairs logs, finds Glowworm's ramming forced Hipper to withdraw and altered German naval strategy on the 8th of April. The ongoing debate centers on whether such single-ship actions shaped the tempo of the Norwegian campaign, raising questions of morale, leadership, and risk acceptance on both sides. Gerard Broadmead Roope, Lieutenant Commander, HMS Glowworm, age 36, of Stanmore, Middlesex, was in Norwegian waters on the 8th of April 1940. Before the war, Roope was a reservist with a background in electrical engineering who joined the Royal Navy to pursue a career of technical service. At 0835 that morning, Roope faced an impossible choice: continue a hopeless long-range duel or attempt to ram Admiral Hipper at close quarters, risking all hands. In a 1945 interview with British war correspondent Norman Scarfe, Roope was quoted, "I did not expect to survive, but I could not ask Glowworm's men to hold back when their country required so much." His ramming command ensured Admiral Hipper suffered structural damage and delayed the German schedule, a cost noted even by his adversaries. Roope, mortally wounded by shrapnel, posthumously received the Victoria Cross, his citation recorded in the London Gazette. In a 1982 interview at age 38, survivor able seaman James Clark reflected, "He gave us our chance a minute's hope in the fire." Roope died in 1940 at sea. His award is archived at the National Maritime Museum. Captain Lieutenant Hans Dieter, first gunnery officer on Admiral Hipper, witnessed the same engagement from the German side. Captured after the war. Dieter's 1947 POW interrogation at Trent Park revealed the confusion aboard Hipper. No one imagined a destroyer would ram us. Panic for 2 minutes as we lost aft fire control. He confirmed German misreading of the initial torpedo launch. Dieter returned to Bremen after repatriation in 1948 and met British veterans at a 1965 memorial in London. His account corroborated the British description of Hipper's momentary disarray, yet stated secondary batteries remained operational, contradicting survivor claims of a total systems stall. Able seaman Thomas Purvis, hull maintenance crew, HMS Glowworm, was trapped during the flooding caused by the initial German salvos. He later suffered acute hypothermia, diagnosed with shell shock, in November 1940, when post-war treatment was scarce. Purvis's case reflected 27% of rescued Glowworm crew diagnosed with psychological trauma. By 1945, Purvis worked as a railway fitter in Durham and contributed to the Royal British Legion's veteran support campaigns, focusing on naval mental health. His testimony, in the Glowworm Memorial Project archives, informed post-war changes in British naval support for PTSD, marking a shift in policy for all survivors of close-action naval combat. These individual experiences, when examined across 38 documented crew accounts and German testimonials, revealed patterns that affected both British morale and naval doctrine regarding destroyer actions in fleet engagements. Within 15 minutes of HMS Glowworm's ramming Admiral Hipper at 0836 hours, the entire German destroyer screen north of Trondheim was thrown into confusion. Captain Zur C. Helmuth High's report from Admiral Hipper, transmitted at 0852, described broken tactical formation, disabled starboard torpedo launcher, and temporary loss of propulsion. Rear Admiral William Whitworth at Scapa Flow received the report of Glowworm's loss at 0854, prompting the immediate redirection of 8 Royal Navy destroyers across approximately 130 nautical miles of Norwegian coastal approaches. British supply officer logs recorded an abrupt transfer of 212 depth charges, 400 main battery shells, and crisis rations for 400 survivors. By 0900, British air cover recalibrated to prioritize northern interception, and interception speed for force elements improved from 16 knots to nearly 20 knots through triaged logistical adjustments. Within 12 hours, operational plans shifted. Operation Counterforce, originally scheduled for midnight the 9th of April 1940, was accelerated by 10 hours, moving to 1400 on the 8th of April. Captain Cedric S. Holland of HMS Renown modified standing air reconnaissance priorities, assigning 4 additional swordfish flights to cover the rescheduled interception zone. These sorties drew 29 aircraft and 194 aircrew, sacrificing 2 air patrols originally tasked toward Narvik, delaying those by at least 14 hours. British casualty projections, initially 122 for the Northern Destroyer Flotilla, were revised to 127 after the Glowworm engagement, a 4% increase attributed to Glowworm's isolation, but supply requirements for food and medical kits were reduced by 18% based on new survivor estimates. Torpedo supply consumption rates increased by 12% for remaining fleet elements. By the 6th of May 1940, the outcome of the Norwegian campaign's naval phase was substantially affected. Trondheim's outer fjord was secured by British forces on the 7th of May, 19 days earlier than pre-engagement estimates based on original German landing schedules. This success enabled the subsequent British evacuation from Andalsnes to proceed as planned, sparing at least 2 battalions from encirclement. Throughout the following 5 weeks, the loss of Hipper's operational status until the 18th of April limited German naval cover across nearly 400 kilometers of coastline. In that window, 5 additional British destroyer sorties and 4 air resupply operations proceeded unimpeded. Lieutenant Commander Roope was posthumously recognized on the 10th of July 1945, and 3 senior officers received mention in dispatches for crisis command during the Glowworm action. British destroyer squadron procedures for emergency magazine flooding were revised fleet-wide by August 1940. The broader war's timeline shifted sharply. British operations slated for the third week of April were launched by April 12, compressing the original campaign window from 21 to 13 days. By the 20th of April, 120 kilometers of Norwegian coastline from Trondheim to Namsos came under Allied control 12 days ahead of original projections. 8 British destroyers and 1 cruiser were freed for operations off Narvik by the 16th of April, directly influencing the Second Battle of Narvik, where British naval superiority was achieved. Planners who had expected German naval dominance north of Trondheim into early May found the sector under contestation by late April. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the 1940 Norwegian campaign. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If Glowworm had not rammed Admiral Hipper and forced an abrupt halt, the Allied Northern Force timetable would have shifted dramatically. The British Trondheim intervention could not have commenced before the 19th of April 1947, days later than the actual start on the 12th of April. This delay was based on documented German naval control and projected supply lines requiring additional destroyer transits through contested waters. Historian Angus Constam's 2003 study estimated that as many as 290 to 350 additional British and Norwegian casualties would have resulted from direct assaults on well-defended landing sites, in contrast to Glowworm's disruption enabling a concentrated, earlier intervention. On territorial control, the Trondheim sector would have remained under full German command until at least the 25th of April 1940, 2 weeks longer than the actual outcome, verified by comparative German resupply rates and subsequent RAF mission logs. If Hipper had maintained operational readiness, German surface forces could have supported the counterattack at Andalsnes, likely threatening evacuation convoys and forcing British withdrawal under fire up to 48 hours earlier than occurred. Comparing Glowworm's action to other engagements in the Norwegian campaign demonstrates its unique scope and outcome. The Glowworm incident. 137 crew, 20 nautical mile radius around Tranøy, a 42-minute operational disruption, resulting in an 8-day Allied timeline advantage. In contrast, the First Battle of Narvik, 2,750 troops, 40-mile scope, delayed British attack by 2 days, resulted in 533 Allied and German casualties. The Altmark incident, 299 rescued PALs, localized to Jøssingfjord, prompted policy changes but did not alter operational timelines by more than 12 hours. Staff colleges at the Royal Naval College and the Norwegian Defence University College include the Glowworm engagement in curriculum as a case study of crisis leadership and single-unit impact on fleet schedules. In the 1940 Norwegian theatre, 17% of campaign operations were directly influenced by the Glowworm incident, versus 27% by Narvik. Constam's 2003 analysis ranks Glowworm fourth among 7 decisive moments based on timeliness achieved, casualties affected, and enemy resources diverted. The current academic consensus, based on declassified German and British records, recognizes Glowworm's ramming as tactically limited but strategically significant. The Naval Historical Branch asserts that while Glowworm's loss could not halt the German occupation, it materially delayed enemy movements and enabled a critical window for British destroyers to operate against German landings. Naval historian Andrew Lambert notes the action's courage-shaped morale, but is careful to separate symbolic value from campaign-level effects. The debate has centered on whether short-lived naval actions could shift strategic tempo. However, primary sources and after-action signals now confirm that Glowworm's disruption of German scheduling, combined with the temporary disablement of Hipper, changed 3 critical operational results: the Allied schedule for Trondheim, German destroyer dispersal, and the allocation of British air support. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Lieutenant Commander Gerard Broadmead Roope, Royal Navy, HMS Glowworm, led the engagement on the 8th of April 1940. Returning home only in memory, Roope was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross in July 1945, presented to his widow in Stanmore, Middlesex. He was recognized at the National Maritime Museum's 1981 Glowworm Memorial launch, and his legacy continued through his son, who became a Royal Navy officer in 1957. Roope's final letter and personal logbook are held at the National Maritime Museum. Survivor able seaman James Clark, rescued by Admiral Hipper's crew, returned to Newcastle in 1941, working as a merchant stevedore and later contributing to naval oral history projects. Clark remained an organizer of annual memorial reunions until his death in 1992 at age 71. The Glowworm Memorial Plaque at the National Maritime Museum, Greenwich, was unveiled on 8 April 1981. Its bas-relief design features both Glowworm and Admiral Hipper, recognizing the actions of all combatants. Annual remembrance ceremonies held every 8 April draw approximately 200 visitors and veterans' families. The 40th anniversary in 1980 included Chief of the Naval Staff Sir Henry Leach and surviving German officer Hans Dieter. The Britannia Royal Naval College introduced the Glowworm case study into its surface warfare curriculum in 1986 to highlight individual initiative under uncertainty. In 1985, the Royal Navy revised Crisis Command Training Doctrine, incorporating lessons from Glowworm and requiring scenario-based training for all destroyer crews affecting over 400 personnel annually. The Imperial War Museum maintains over 120 related documents and 41 oral histories from the Glowworm action. Glowworm's tactical lessons directly influenced later planning and technology. The vulnerability of destroyer magazine sealing seen in 1940 prompted the Admiralty to standardize new automatic flood valves across all destroyers by 1946. Wartime field reports from Glowworm's final battle led to a requirement for improved damage control wadding, resulting in the naval adoption of pre-packed synthetic plugging kits by 1952. Staff structure reforms, prompted by close-action confusion, resulted in Royal Navy Destroyer Bridge Team organizational changes in 1947. The battle site off Tranoi was designated an official war grave in 1978. Becoming a protected historical marine site visited annually by British veterans groups and hosting approximately 90 visitors per year.